Hello, this is John Feigenbaum. I'm with Jeff Garrett, and this is the Red Book Podcast number 2. Today, we are digging deeper into the subject of the Red Book, the guidebook of United States coins. Jeff and I are back to discuss this great subject, talk more about the new edition, the 2026, which is a massive upgrade from the past edition. Also, based on comments from the last podcast, answer some of the questions about the contents of this book and what our mindset is going into this new edition. Jeff, thanks again for coming today. Welcome. And let's just jump right in.
Thanks for having me again today.
Welcome. You and I were just chatting before this podcast about how fundamentally different this new book is. I think it's pretty obvious from the cover that we've changed the look. If we just start from the beginning of the book, the first thing we'll talk about is this contributors and advisors section, which you've been very intimate with in the past decade.
The contributor system has strong roots. It goes back to 1942 with R.S. Yeoman, when he started the concept of the Blue Book, and later in 1947 with the Red Book. R.S. Yeoman was more of a marketer. He worked at Whitman Publishing, and the whole idea with collectibles was they started with coin boards. He really wasn't a serious numismatist, but he also knew the hobby, and he knew a lot of the people. He brought in the best and the brightest minds to help him come up with the content and the pricing. Of course, there's always been a price guide. And so the contributor system has been around. You pick up a Red Book from 1947, 1957, 1967, you're going to see a list of contributors. And most of the contributors, when you look in there, will be like some of the biggest names of the hobby at the time, BB and Fair and Zerby earlier, and Kossoff, guys like that. And but the contributor system, in my opinion, had, like, over the last 10 or 20 years, quite a few people that were doing it that just really were putting less effort in it that I wanted to see. They would, I call it the people who would, like, just take a gray sheet and add 20% or 30% or whatever. And I was getting dissatisfied with that. And I wanted to go back through the list and elevate what I was looking for in a contributor. Now, for me, we also changed it to advisory board, because I look at more like you're not just contributing and helping. You're going to be like a numismatic advisor. I have a list of people. You and I both get emails on a regular basis. They'll say, what about this variety? I know you and I got one the other day about Lincoln pennies. I have to have a go-to guy. I know numismatics pretty thoroughly, been doing it for 50 years, but I don't know the micro details about every series. And you would need to sometimes to reach out to somebody and say, hey, what's up with this? We've been calling it this and that. Should we call it a large date, small date issue or something like that? We have to have it's almost like having a shout out. But what I want now is not someone that's going to be adding money for pricing as a contributor. They're actually experts in this series. So that's really what I consider the transition we've tried to make. And I had a lot of conversations about it and the different names, and that's why it's changed this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's very interesting to have learned about how the system works. And I think I told you since day one, being that my career essentially nowadays is mostly about pricing, I felt like it was an impossible task for someone who's not full-time, like myself, really focused on price, to just jump in for a month at a time and say, I'm just going to price Lincoln cents this week for the Red Book in 2026. It's too complicated a subject matter. So better that we've offloaded that, meeting a new kind of advisor. But there's other ways to contribute. The Red Book, besides being the world expert on shield nickels, you can contribute to the Red Book. For example, we can't thank companies like Heritage and Stack's Bowers, PCGS, NGC, CAC Grading. These companies are providing research material. It's very important. In the case of the auction companies, they're giving incredible amounts of data. A great collections has been superb at helping us with data to support what we need. All those auction companies are really good and support our brand. For example, they sell 1,000 Red Books a year out of the store. That's a pretty big contribution to this brand. Or if you get on your podcast, promote and talk about us. We see other ways now to be a contributor. An advisor has to be a series expert, which to rise above, I think you and I both know, and Patrick, who's working on pricing with me, has the high bar. But there's names that come up all the time, like John Danruther or John Ager and others. We appreciate all those. I really want to have them on future podcasts, by the way. So stay tuned. We'll get them into the next podcast as we get better at this whole process. We can transition to a conversation about how pricing is now done. It's quite interesting. It's radical. What we've done with pricing in this new Red Book was strip the tree from the trunk out of the tree, because it is a pricing guide. I always felt that it was really important. One reason it was very important to me to acquire Whitman and merge the Gray Sheet with the Whitman companies was that whatever prices were in the Red Book were never going to be synchronous necessarily with Gray Sheet and our retail brand of CPG. So by merging the values together, they can now be synchronized. If we determine that an 1895 Morgan dollar and MS60 Unk is worth $15,000 at the wholesale level, then really the Red Book level should also move in that direction, in the same synchronized direction. You and I would never been able to communicate about 12,000 different pricing rows times, let's say six prices for every coin. We're looking at about 72,000 prices in this book.
The good news is you're doing it on a daily basis. You can take snapshots whenever you want. If a set of XF seated quarters comes up for sale and you're able to digest and extrapolate values in real time, that's pretty much your full-time job and your whole team. I used to have to spend a month in the basement trying to just crunch out numbers and try to look up things, and it was just really become a really difficult job. I think it's been the perfect transition from somebody who was basically 9 to 5 every day doing pricing, that they can take what they're doing and take that snapshot when we go to press and have as accurate prices as possible. So it's really, you're the perfect company to have bought Red Book, I think.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that we're together. It's been seamless. At the Gray Sheet, the CDN publishing side, we've spent several $1 million developing our pricing database and software. We track 500,000 prices across world coins and paper money in US. About 60% of these prices are affected by spot metals. If gold goes up $30 today, all those coins that are an ounce of gold and are intrinsically based, let's say late 19th century gold coins or something like that, they're really spot plus coins. They change. They go up and down every day. You go on our website. We hope that if you're really interested in this Red Book and the pricing matters, then you'll buy the Red Book and then you'll use the website at graysheet.com and keep up with pricing, because it's out of date, of course, the moment the book comes out. So you got to go to the website as the companion.
A lot of people say that to me about it being out of date, but if you pick up a Red Book, some things might change like bullion does, but it really does have a better shelf life. I think people, when I look at it and I pull up something, auction will happen or whatever. And I was actually pretty proud about the Red Book pricing. And I think what you do is some series might change and 5% of it is probably not live that day, but the book really has a much better longevity on pricing and then people may give it credit for, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Some seated quarters, for instance, don't change that much. My philosophy on pricing was the more commoditized a coin was, the less percentage over wholesale would be. And the more rare a coin is, that spread between wholesale and retail is different. Is that same with, I assume your Gray Sheet that a little bit, like if a 72cc dime comes up, the retail price that's going to be different than of an $83 and MS65 is being priced.
That's a good question. I haven't put much science into that at this time, but I can argue both sides of that. Let's call it the esoteric factor, right? A coin that rarely ever is traded, a 72cc dime. You see them in a nice choice VF. If you're lucky to get one, let's say $20,000 coin, should the guy who buys it then ask $25,000 or $22,000 based on its cost of 20? I don't know the answer to that. I think every dealer is different, but when it comes to what I'm learning is that when it comes to, let's say, more modern coins that are commoditized, let's say the 2024 flowing hair dollar metals and gold coins, there's a lot of marketing also in there, right? There's also getting graded. There's the carrying costs and the big marketing that goes along. So I don't think those people can work at 10% either at the end of the day. So I don't really know the answer to your question. I think that it really depends a lot on the channel. The more sophisticated that you become as a collector or a dealer, we want you to have all this information so that you can make intelligent decisions, because a lot of collectors do become dealers at some point. Once you learn enough, now all of a sudden you're a dealer. I bought a coin. I don't need it in my collection, but I know it's a good value, so I bought it and I'll put it on eBay. Or I want to sell my collection and I love attending coin shows. I've had several favorite customers that became dealers over the years. That's just a natural transgression. My father was one of them. He was a collector. Professor, couldn't afford to keep the collection going unless he started selling off the duplicates. And there you go. Now we're dealers.
I think that's the whole point of the Whitman empire, is to make educated collectors. That's why you've got dozens of books that have come out, specialty books. I always tell people my pricing, I assume yours that, is that these prices represent prices you should expect to pay if you have done at least some research, and you don't just buy the first coin that you were offered. I also have an old saying that I tell people: collectors buy coins and investors are sold coins. If you do a little homework and use these price guides and specialty books, your entry point for what you pay for a coin is super important, is how well you do with it as an investment down the road. And that's why it's important to educate yourself, no matter what you're buying, modern coins, vintage coins.
And we have seen people at every level. There's no perfect model of any of these people. Some people who are very wealthy and can afford great coins don't have time to learn about them the same way that a hobbyist does. We know Heritage, for example, is selling a collection at the fun show coming up with one of the owners of the Florida Marlins, right? And he's got an incredible set of coins. The ones featured in the advertisement, I've handled about 3 or 4 of them, like the 94 S dime, the 49C open wreath gold dollar. These are some old friends of mine. And I'm thinking, this is what I would have loved to be, somebody who could afford to build this side of collection. And I would hope he does really well when he sells. These are great coins. And I don't know what his level of expertise is in the hobby, but hopefully the hobby treated him well.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, we were at the dinner in Baltimore, and Greg Rohan from Heritage said that guy started collecting those coins because he bought a 100 Greatest book.
Right.
And those coins were all in the 100 Greatest. Look at the impact that Whitman had on a guy who's probably spent $25 million on his coin collection because he was given the book. So he was given a Whitman publishing book. He went out and bought the best. And Greg said he called him up one day, so I want to buy as many as I can get out of the book.
Right. And that's another subtopic for us, is that we should probably do a 100 greatest that excludes coins that are essentially unbuyable. And I'm not talking about 94 S dimes, but let's say half unions that are only at the Smithsonian. It would be really fun to build the world greatest 100 greatest set. And that is definitely something we should do, Jeff.
Yeah, it'd be good because people really like guidance. I gave a book to someone a couple of days ago, and I said, it's all about the stories. Lots of coins that are inexpensive have great stories as well. You just got to identify those stories and tell them, and people really buy into that.
Is another segue to the book now, to the 26th edition, is that we changed the layout. It's 6x9 instead of 5.5 by 8.5, just a little bigger. That size allowed us to put the GSID, the gray sheet identifier catalog numbers, which will hopefully become ubiquitous in this industry. Everyone says, I want to look down a certain point. I need to know the GSID. That's great, but gave us more space. Ended up giving us some kind of more odd spaces in the book. And we use those spaces in a lot of cases to highlight. By the way, the Stella is a 100 greatest coin. By the way, I don't remember exactly all the ones, 1792 half beans, other coins that are in the 100 greatest. We're trying to cross-market these and really bring attention to these great coins like 94 S dime, 13 nickels. It's just too many great ones.
I remember talking to you about, we have the pictures in there, and then the next year's edition, as we keep refining the book, I want to put a little like a paragraph of the story so people can get a hint of the story and then find out more. For the 26 Red Book, I was able to do more content driven. And I think we'll maybe talk about it on the next podcast, but I think the whole Did You Know is a really great subject to discuss, because that was the most fun part of the new Red Book.
We added a lot of these little pieces, trying to engage people with this book that's otherwise a dry catalog of pricing. Now we're adding some flavor to it and tying it into the 100 greatest and other subjects we talk about. So that's a good segue into this, what should have been included in the Red Book, and going into the 27 edition now, because that's natural for us to start thinking about what we would do again in the next one, because we want to change this book every year. We're going to incrementally improve it. What are your thoughts? How do we pick varieties? Like, what makes a Red Book variety? This is a really desired thing, right? Like, there's cherry picker varieties, but when does a cherry picker variety become a mainstream Red Book variety?
I think that it's a very important topic. I'm telling you about it because the people who bought the Red Book from the Whitman Anderson family didn't like to change a lot. They loved the book. They thought it was very successful. So change always made them nervous. There was a thought process with Ken Brissett too, that if you, let's say Lincoln Pennies, if you put it in the Red Book, someone considers that I need to have that to have a complete set of Lincoln Pennies. And that's limiting, because if there's a coin that's interesting, but maybe it's not too minor, I like to have more information that people can find and have. I don't like putting peer pressure on collectors. We put a variety in the Roosevelt dimes, all of a sudden you have to decide what goes in albums. And that's probably even a higher level of trying to decide what you should collect. Red Book and then the Whitman albums, they're informative, but also they guide people on what they should collect or what's considered a complete collection. I know even the set registries have to think about that. That is a very weighty topic. And I've always taken it pretty serious because we, as an editor of Red Book, and I know that you've taken over being in the role of being involved in it more, we get constantly, people send us emails like, I think you should have, I don't think it was, some guy was really, every year he would send me 1838 or 39 bust half dollars, got a rotated reverse that he wanted to have. It should be a Red Book variety. It brings more money in auction, et cetera, et cetera. And I talked about it and I said, we put that in there. There's tons of coins with rotated reverses. That just opens up a can of worms. You do want to have some sort of continuity, but it's an important topic. What actually goes in the book and doesn't go in the book, because we feel like we're educating collectors. We're also guiding what you should collect. So we have to think about it pretty hard, and especially the albums. That's really important.
Yeah, but it'd be really fun. I was thinking, what are some of these kind of real tweener items? This year we've added Tail Bar, Morgan Dollars, and Starface. They're just really important coins. These are not, there's VAM collectors, and that's a very big specialty, but there's maybe, I don't know, thousands of VAMs. There are about 5 that really deserve to be in the Red Book, in my opinion. I think we added 2 or 3 this year, and we can consider whether we should add more. Should we add pricing for PL and DMPL Morgans? Very much a collectible.
For sure.
We did add something that had been long missing from these books, which was the full Bellline Franklins, full band dimes, and full head standing Liberty quarters. These are very much accepted and consistently bring a different price level than their let's say full Bellline Franklins or something, right? There are definitely important issues that are noted to be rare in these states. 26D Standing Liberty Quarter, the most obvious one. The coin is most common gem, Standing Liberty Quarter in MS65, and maybe 5th or rarest as a full head, because
they're basically apples and oranges, and they're collected differently. They're distinctly different. We really want to think about it carefully. We want the Red Book to reflect how people collect coins.
Right.
That's the really important part. And people collect, I would think that most people that actually really get into mint state of these coins that we're adding, that's what they do. They want the best collectors are drew into the best, and they like to get full bell lines, full bands, and full heads. So that is the way that it's collected. I think it was a very important addition to the Red Book.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have started the process of improving proof coins, and I'm talking about like 19th, 20th century proofs, seated coinage, barber coinage, these coins that the proofs were added as a single column into the right, which is just not fair to say, okay, what's a 1905 barber quarter worth in proof 63? That is actually probably the least amount that coin trades in that grade, right? Because it's really, most of those proofs are known in proof 64, 65, 66. And so we have started the process of giving more information by breaking the proofs into their own chart. In the future, based on feedback, we could add cameo, deep cameo, where it matters.
I think you do that just so people watching this on your type charts. It's important. You've taken the coins like barber half dollars. You do have values for cameos and deep cameos in there in the chart. That is another level of detail for all these coins. A lot of times people who buy a barber half or a barber quarter, who buy them by type, there's not that many, much less people buy them as like a complete set of barber quarters in proof. But lots and lots of people want to have one as a type coin. Knowing their cameo and deep cameo values is really important.
So we have added at the head of each series now, section headers, we've added the pricing chart for the type coins, and where we have it, we've added proof, the regular surfaces, cameo, deep cameo. We've also done that in Indian sets for type coins for red, mint state red, proof red. We've added a lot more in a progression that without breaking everybody's, the poor designers, Matt that does the design and Diana who does a lot of our day-to-day handwork editing, we're trying to break them too badly in one year. So every year, we're just going to make this wonderful book even more wonderful, thanks to these additions and the knowledge that you bring is just fantastic. Jeff, where would you take the subject from here?
I think that you mentioned doing the proof in Dimple Morgan dollars. I think that's really important, because I think they are collected like as apples and oranges. Also, you've been lucky because there's been some serious collections of those sold in the last year or two, a couple of major collections. So there's a lot of good price comparisons that you can use to have accurate prices. When we talk about these things, and if people will watch these podcasts, I'd like to make the Red Book a collaborative effort. The whole community is like, obviously the Red Book is one of the most important tools in the hobby. Everyone gets one. If you're a beginner collector or even like the most advanced dealers, have a Red Book, and we should all be like a community trying to make it the best book possible. Because I look at the Red Book as an ambassador for the hobby. Anybody who gets started in the hobby is going to start with the Red Book. And I think we have to have a good impression. Over the years, a lot of people bought Red Book just because they always had bought one, but I want people to buy it now because it's got content that's really vital for them to have. I think we'll just keep digging into all the different series. I think the important mantra is, how do people collect coins? And let's give them the information they want to do that. That's what we want to do, is give everyone the tool to be a better collector.
I think you said it perfectly. And I think on that note is a perfect way to end the conversation. Please leave your comment suggestions underneath the video here on YouTube, and subscribe to the Gray Sheet YouTube channel so that you'll know every time Jeff and I do a new video. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to doing this again in a couple of weeks. Happy holidays to everybody, and a Merry Christmas to you too, Jeff. And look forward to seeing you at the Fun Show in January. We could probably do the podcast right around the Fun Show. I think it'd be fun to talk about the Fun Show when we do our next podcast. There's a lot to discuss there.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to 2025, and also just to give everybody a little bit of something to look forward to. I think 26 is going to be a giant boom for our hobby, because U.S. Mint's going to be changing all the coins for 1 year. Red Book's going to have a lot of coins to include in it next year. So I think we got some good times coming ahead, and there'll be a lot to talk about.
26 is going to be a huge year with the new coin age. I agree. I'm excited for it, and I hope everyone else is. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.